Welcome to the stage, Pendarvis, Harshaw, and Ernesto Aguilar. Ernesto is KQED's Executive Director of Radio Programming and Content Inclusion Initiatives. Pendarvis is a columnist and host of Right Nowish. Their conversation will touch on the importance of representation, evolving technology, and I'm sure there will be a few surprises as well. If you have questions for Pendarvis and Ernesto, please share them in the Q&A portion of this event in the app. We've left some time at the end for questions. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. I told Pendarvis that we're going to have a hard time following up the Dolby video, but we're going to do our best.
And Vocal Rush, and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very excited to talk to you all today. We want to lay out a little bit about ourselves, both our personal story as well as our professional story, how we got in front of you all today, and then get to the questions, the conversation, the meat of it all, right? Yeah. I think that's what we're here for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to cheer like you had breakfast already. Come on, y'all. There you go. Just kidding.
Start with myself. Journalist from Oakland, California, and okay, I got a couple people who know where Oakland is. All right, yeah. Oakland is always in the house. And I want to share with you a piece that was my entry into doing this work that I do now as a profession. I was 17 years old. I traveled to the West African country of Ghana. While in Ghana, I realized there's a lot here that reminds me of Oakland. So I wrote a piece while I was at Youth Radio, which is now YR Media, and that played on National Public Radio. And again, I was 17. And so we'll just go ahead and jump into that piece.
I asked Kobe why all of my dreams in Ghana were about Oakland. He simply said point of reference. He explained how in Ghana, many students and workers make a living far away from their home villages, but the memories of home stay with them. So when they return to the village, they can truly be at home. Everything clicked. That was the purpose of my trip, to understand the point of reference. Oakland is my village. I know, Oakland isn't a village per se, but it works in the same manner. Instead of drums echoing through our residences, there are cars that beat down the block as if there were a pack of wild gorillas in the trunk. And you probably won't find the beautiful color schemes of kente cloth in Oakland, but you will find my boys coordinating their authentic jerseys with their high tops.
17, my voice was somehow deeper than it is now. But that was my entry into public radio, and little did I know that was the start of my career path.
Nice. Well, it's so interesting you shared that piece about music and how that wove through your life. For me, I was not a backseat baby. I was not raised around necessarily on public radio. But for me, music and culture was very much part of my DNA growing up. So for the uninitiated, thank you for that, by the way. But for the uninitiated, this is our Sweet Caroline. I have to say that. But so I grew up in this neighborhood. That's my house. That's where I grew up as a kid. Denver Harbor, East Houston, Texas. And a lot of the community and a lot of what I experienced was very similar. You can walk through these streets, you can see this community, and you see the conversations coming out of trucks, coming out of vans, coming out of yards, and you get a chance to see people in a different kind of way than you would just in the streets here in San Francisco. My dad was in the military. He was discharged after he did his service, raised 3 kids in Denver Harbor and Houston, Texas, and raised us around a lot of military discipline because just military. For those of you who have been in the military or military families, who grew up around parents in the military, our bedtime was 9 p.m. because that's lights out. So those of you who don't know what 9 p.m. is, it literally means you go to bed at 9 o'clock. I can do a show of hands here and say, who at 16 was sleepy at 9 p.m.? Me either. I would probably say you the same thing. That's probably not tired at 16 at 9 p.m. But I found that I could listen to the radio and not wake up my parents. I listened very, very quietly, and I shared a bedroom with my brother, so I could listen very quietly and not wake him up as well, because he'd get me in trouble. He'd rat me out, because my little brother. And one Monday night at 11 p.m., I discovered community radio.
Here we go.
Y'all, God bless punk rock, because I will tell you, as a boy from Navajo, hearing something I had never heard before opened me up into this world of voices and ideas and culture. Coming to public radio to hear about these movements and struggles and people and the world that suddenly made Denver Harbor feel so small. But it also made me realize where my heart needed to be. You've been a teacher. All of you know this already, but I'm going to say it anyway. When you're 16 years old, you don't really know the world just yet. You don't even know what you want to do with your life because you don't know life yet. And so I was in that same boat. But public radio is what encouraged me to become the high school newspaper kid, into the college newspaper kid, into the major metropolitan newspaper reporter, into the radio reporter, into the radio news director, into the radio program director, and into San Francisco, where my mother still asks, "Why did you leave Texas?" But it also inspired me to be the first person in my family to graduate from college and to use this limited time that we have on this earth to try to touch people's lives with public radio the way that mine was changed. President Lyndon Johnson, also Texan, visioned public broadcasting as part of the Great Society, as part of his initiatives. History teachers, we were listening, we know these things now, but public broadcasting was envisioned as a way to transform people. Lyndon Johnson, when he signed the Public Broadcasting Act in 1967, said that America should do more than just focus on creating wealth. We should be looking to enrich the human spirit. And I think about those words every day because they're not just words for me, they're part of my life. I am one of those people that was transformed because of public radio. And I have a debt to thank you for, and all of you on behalf of all the 16-year-olds in your classrooms, because my father, again, being in the military, did not graduate from high school, said, if you're going to go to college, you should be a doctor or a lawyer. The teachers are the ones who said, you should be a journalist. If that's what you care about, if that is what matters to you, pursue the dream. Go to college and do it. And thank you on their behalf.
Bravo, bravo. On the note of education and really appreciating where education can come from, mine definitely came from the schools as well as through youth radio and other nonprofit organizations, but it was the community that I really latched on. Specifically, elder Black men in my community of Oakland, California, bestowed wisdom upon me before I even knew what I was listening to. And then when I became a journalist, I realized, like, oh, there's something happening here that hasn't been documented before. So I took it upon myself to, I'm dating myself here, but this is the Tumblr days. So I started this Tumblr called OG Told Me, where I was running around town interviewing elder Black men, asking them for tidbits of wisdom, taking their portrait photos and saying, hey, if you could talk to young people and just give them some guidance, what would you tell them? People told me that, one guy was like, how old are you? I was like, I'm 25 at the time. He was like, I got milk in my refrigerator older than you. I was like, this guy right here, I asked him if I could take his photo. He said, man, they've been asking me that all my life. These tidbits of wisdom, they needed to be documented, not just documented, but done so in an artful manner, very tasteful, something that could be digestible. And at the time I was teaching, I was at Oakland Tech, and I was teaching young Black men and said, you know what, you guys are on Tumblr anyway, check out this project I'm doing. So through that, This became my calling card. This was my voice. This was the first place that I showed what I could do if I had the tools. And what's most important now that have been in this career for over 2 decades, is that this was independent. This was outside any organization. This is me just looking at my community and realizing what stories need to be told. So we talk about public media. This is the most public of media.
What teachers influenced you? What shaped your life in that regard?
The teachers inside the school or outside the school?
Both.
I think the greatest teacher is my mother, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Yeah, she's the one who said, you don't want to play baseball, you want to write poetry and do raps, go to that radio station. And I went to youth radio, and youth radio showed me how to not be a baseball player.
Like the Nas line, being my mother's son was my greatest honor.
Yes, so many Nas lines about my mother is the closest thing I'll ever have to God. It's another thing he says. So yes, I think about that often.
Yeah. No, I think for me, public radio made me a bit of a history nerd. So I appreciated the fact that I could be in these history classes in high school. And I had one teacher who once told me that, and I know that we hear this a lot, but at the time, it didn't connect until then. But it was just like, if you understand history, you can help influence it. You can be a part of it. Now, that's obviously not a one-to-one comparison because there's income inequality, there's wealth, there's power dynamics here. But how we react to it is a little bit different. It's a little bit of you can direct yourself a little bit differently in this world, and you can move a little bit differently with that kind of knowledge. And I think the other person that I think of when I think about teachers that touched my life was this professor who told me that I should be happy that I got, or not even happy, but I should be proud of the fact that I've gotten to where I am at in spite of everything that's been in front of me. And it's weird because I never thought of it that way. Yeah. Because, and those of you who are from economically disadvantaged situations may have heard this before, thought about this before, but it's just never occurred to me. It's always been, if you just hustle, grind, work harder, push, keep asking, keep pushing, and that's just the way it is. And I never really thought about the world as there is something that I should have recognized in myself to understand that this is a choice and I have to push myself. And luckily, to your point, same thing. I have a mother who pushed me and said, you just need to keep trying and keep working.
Beautiful.
So I think that we talked a little bit about some of the pieces that we're proud of. And you talked about OG Told Me. Are there other pieces? I know right now it's just celebrating 200 episodes.
Yes. So talk about that briefly. I host a podcast where, we're celebrating our 200th episode. And it's been a lot. It's been a lot. But also very fortunate to have the conversations that we've been having with artists in Northern California.
Yeah. And I wanted you to share some more pieces that you've worked on as well, because I know that there's some other impactful stories that you've told. I think when I think about impactful stories that I have had a chance to be a part of, it is this. So I will rewind to say that one of the great challenges for me as a radio producer has been, and I get this energy when I listen to Right Nowish too, how can I touch someone's life and help shine a light to a path that they may not know is there? How do you help people understand themselves when they think they already do? And you can turn on a bulb that makes them understand, oh, I now see the world in a whole bright luminescence that has made things a lot clearer for me in terms of my path. And so I've tried to carry that energy with me every day in the work that I do. And one of the pieces that I worked on that I think I'm most proud of has to do with the most pedestrian thing in the world, Cinco de Mayo. You all heard Cinco de Mayo, drink specials, parties, nachos, all that. But so there's a whole complicated history in Mexico. But the part of the history of Cinco de Mayo is to remember the Battle of Puebla. And I won't get into this whole story. The history teachers are going to be really sad. I'm not going to do this. But we're going to just say that the Battle of Puebla was a moment in which a very small and underarmed Mexican force pushed back the French army, which at that period of time in the 1800s was incredibly feared because they had colonized a lot of the global South. And the Mexican army didn't ultimately win the war, but it was an important battle that was remembered for that period. And so I thought, we could sit here and talk about drink specials all the time for Cinco de Mayo, but I'd really like to tell this story to a young person to help them understand it and help them see the history a little differently. So it took a long time, but I found a professor named John Hart. He has written dozens of books about the Mexican Revolution, movements in Mexico, politics, all these other topics. And so I produced this piece in 2007, dating myself now. I still get requests from stations to air this. I just tell them it's on SoundCloud, go find it. And in this piece, John talks about that battle. He's a masterful storyteller. And so I want to share a little piece of this. And in this part, he talks a bit about the moment when Miguel Negrete rallied his forces to rise up and strike at the French battalions that were charging ahead.
The French get within about 75 to 50 yards, and Negrete bolts out on this charger between the two forces, and he rides in front of his men, and he tells them, he says, in the great name of the nation and God, in el gran nombre de la patria, arriba y fuego, stand and fire. And now these French are 50 yards away and they're below the Mexicans. And the Mexicans stand en masse and fire point blank into the French ranks.
I have family still in Monterrey, Chihuahua, Mexico City as well. Beautiful city if you've not been, of course. And I think one of the things that I've always struggled with, and I think a lot of young people of color struggle with as well, when we begin to think about where we came from, if we know, and if we begin to think about those things, is what that means to us, and where that places us in history, and where that places us in terms of moments of pride and moments of feeling like we belong. In the case of Mexico, there's so much that we all hear in the news, cartels and corruption and violence and so many other things. And this is not to say, these types of stories are not to say that those things aren't real and they don't happen and they're not things that we as countries and we as people should contend with. But there are also moments in which we should be proud and to think about our histories in a different way and to recognize those moments when we're not just hearing about cartels. We're hearing about times that we were able to stand up for ourselves in this very minor historical moment against an army that had crushed Vietnam, had crushed quite a bit of South America and elsewhere. And that's probably one of the pieces I'm most proud of.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yep.
On the note of belonging, that's something that's central to a lot of the stories that I do, and we're going to work backwards through some slides here. But I wanted to share with you a couple of projects that I've done that speak to that note of belonging, representation, as well as dealing with some of the ills of society. There's a piece that I did, making sure we get to the right one. There we go. This one is called Facing Life. Again, completely independent, myself and a photographer by the name of Brandon Tauzik, we went on a mission to talk to 8 individuals throughout the state of California who had all served mass amounts of time in prisons throughout the state, but had been released due to changes in recent laws. And our question was, if these people were a part of this swelling prison system and then were released back to the greater society, who's there to assist them as they navigate a world with Bluetooth headphones and hybrid cars and resumes that are no longer printed but are digital? And so I share with you Jose's story. Jose was located in Stockton. This brother unfortunately passed due to COVID, complications to COVID, but he shared with us that his story largely centers around his father and his disputes with his father. And when Jose passed, his last request was that he be buried next to his father. So the image that you see is a cinematograph of Jose's widow standing next to him. and where he's buried. And the goal of this project, again, multimedia, completely independent, backed by the Pulitzer Center. One, it shows my growth as an independent producer, as well as our attempts to make conversation around, again, some major issues plaguing society, namely belonging. Where do people belong after serving so much time behind bars, and how can we assist them? And what we come to find out is that we weren't just speaking to the elected officials, the stakeholders, the people in suits in Sacramento, but we were talking to people who work at the DMV, who are gatekeepers to somebody's whole life. Somebody might not know how to use the turnstile, and so you help them with the technology, and you set them on a path instead of having them have a breakdown in the middle of the DMV. And so this project, again, is called Facing Life, and it really centered around that idea of belonging. So thank you for that. The next piece is a little lighter, but still on the note of belonging. We can go ahead to it. This guy on the right, well, left, Marshawn Lynch, famed football player, hilarious media personality, proud representative of North Oakland, California. He's very specific about being from North Oakland. Marshawn Lynch is known for so many things, eating Skittles, dancing, you name it, right? Mm-hmm. He's also an avid biker. One day I was riding through Oakland with my daughter on the backseat of my bike, and I saw about a couple hundred, maybe even 1,000 kids gathered in downtown Oakland back when Marshawn Lynch had the Beast Mode store down there. And Marshawn comes up, hops out of a car, hops on a bike, and they just start riding around town. And so I'm like, I'm not going to just go home. Well, come on, kid, we're riding with Marshawn. And so we paint the town, and I'm having fun taking pictures. It's a Sunday afternoon ride, nothing political about it. But my wheels start turning as a journalist, knowing the context of what's happened in Oakland with how many Black, brown kids have been criminalized and or families have been pushed out of the town. And I realized that this is a protest of a different sort. This is a reclamation of land. This is people taking over their community again. This is kids having fun, free fun. And so I wrote about it. And it's a piece that's near and dear to my heart because I wrote it in like an hour. Like as soon as I got home, I was like, yeah, I know what I'm writing about. And it was fun, genuine fun. And it really spoke to what I like to do in terms of documenting the culture of the Bay Area.
That's beautiful. I'm wondering if we can talk a bit about representation in the time that we've got left. There have been big movements to see that more young people. I think we just saw some of these slides a little bit earlier around the potential for workforces to grow and leadership to grow. And curious how we would position some of our work around that.
You know what's mind-blowing to me is I didn't know this was a job opportunity. I didn't know you could be a arts and culture reporter. I didn't know it was a thing, you know?
Right.
I wanted to be a rapper, right?
Right.
Right. And so when you talk about representation or that the growth that's happening, being clear with young folks as they enter that space of 15, 16, 17, what am I going to be when I grow up? So you know that you can hold a boom mic. You can be the person behind the scenes making the chyrons, little things like that. Exposure is the key to me. I don't know, what was it for you?
Yeah, I think that was a lot of it too. Just getting a chance to do the work and getting a chance to have people talk to me about the opportunities. And for me right now, I think one of the things I'm really concerned about and hopeful about, and I'm happy to talk with you all about it because you all have so many touches with young people, is how can we also empower young people with the leadership skills part of it? Soft skills to talk to people and how to negotiate and how to help direct people and how to manage. Because there's a great movement around representation, people being in front of the camera and in front of the microphone. But really, I think one of the things I worry about is there's a lot of folks who can do that. We need more people calling shots in these organizations and being leaders in these organizations and doing more. That inspires me. My friend Erica Carlos from El Tecolote just took over as editor-in-chief over there. And I think that that's the kind of thing that we need to see more of, where young people said, give me the ball. I am willing to do this work. They need support and they need mentorship. And those of you who work with students, absolutely encourage those soft skills, encourage that leadership development part of it, because it's so crucial to take that step beyond just doing the work to being the director, the manager, the CEO, and everything else.
Understood. One more time, round of applause for that. That's a great point. That position of editor,
Yeah.
That's the decision maker.
It is so interesting, and you know this, having done a lot of this work, and those of you who have worked in media know this too. The editors are the gatekeepers.
Yes.
The editors are the people who can approve something or shut it down completely. And I have talked to so many journalists who are diverse journalists who get told, this editor doesn't understand this story.
Yeah.
This editor doesn't get this. This editor doesn't, air quotes, see this. And so the story doesn't get told. And so we absolutely need more editors. We need more people in leadership.
I think that's a great segue into the next slide. This is a poster of the podcast that I'm the host of. It's called Right Now-ish, and the editor makes the decisions, and she's standing next to me. Marisol Medina Cadena is a beautiful human being. Just like in terms of her thinking, she understands the world, and she's allowed me to see the world through her eyes. And I can bring stories that I think are important, and she'll help me tease out why I think it's important. You know, having that type of relationship, she just had a birthday last week, and so pulling up to her birthday and being around her family, it's like, okay, no, this is my sister in sound, you know, this is my partner in production, and realizing that I wouldn't have had the success of 200 stories without Marisol, who edits, not only edits, but also sometimes steps in as a host, because it can be exhausting being out in front of people all the time. And so having that support of a tag team partner, I wouldn't even call it like anything beyond that. Like really, I can't stress to you how important it is to have someone who really gets it, as like, I guess maybe a football kind of thing. It's like if you're the quarterback, you need the offensive coordinator in your ear telling you what to do. You need somebody just giving you some guidance. And through that, we've talked to a myriad of people. I'm talking about, we did a series on jazz artists in the Bay Area. We did one where we looked at different types of wheels in the Bay Area. We did one where we talked to a young woman who was training to be an Olympic boxer. And her words stick with me. She's young, still learning the game. When she gets frustrated, she says she just lets her hands fly. Letting your hands fly, just a novel concept that resonated with me, especially as a writer, because sometimes I'm like, I don't even know what to write. I will dim the light on the computer screen and literally just let my hands fly on the keyboard. And it's through these conversations that I've grown personally, and as a teammate with Marisol, we've grown this Right Now-ish project.
Letting your hands fly is a really good segue to a whole conversation that I know the education space is talking about, technology.
Yeah.
And how that impacts the work.
Yeah.
And then also how it impacts young people going down the way. I love the idea of letting your hands fly, because for me, a lot of my career has been based on being the person that says, I'll do it, I'll learn it, I'll make the mistakes, I'll show you how to do it after I've learned it, and just be that person that is a conduit, is a guide for other people. I guess it's probably not unlike my desire to support people in public radio and seeing that light, but helping people see that. I'm doing that right now for KQED with some AI projects and some other things, but having that is really powerful. But I think, and it's so interesting, some of your other stories, it makes me really think a lot about, as much as the technology can continue to grow and continue to just evolve beyond all of us and beyond all of our awareness sometimes, it's just a tool to, I think, the age-old piece of one-on-one engagement. Yep. Getting to know somebody, getting to hear someone's story. Ira Glass about This American Life tells a story when he's asked, is radio going away? And he says no, because as long as there are people who would like to hear a story, who would like to be in their mind's eyes and in their imaginations and in their hearts and in their minds, sitting at a table with someone they don't know and get to know them and their story and experience them and have their eyes opened and their hearts and their minds opened, there will probably be radio, but there will always be that connection. Yeah. There's always that desire. So technology is just that tool to that. So if we help guide people to that, I think it can be very beneficial.
That is awesome, because you think about with just where it even comes from. Like there was a time where we didn't have language to express with one another. There was a time where we didn't have.
Say that again.
We didn't have the language to express with one another, a shared language, right? So that's technology in itself. And that language continues to evolve. And that's one thing that I'm really fascinated with, is that, yes, the material things, the mechanical things, the phone, there's always new phone updates. It's irritating, right? But that's going to continue to evolve, right?
Yeah.
I'm here to ensure that humans continue to evolve with it, that the language continues to evolve, that the ideas continue to evolve. Those are the things that we really harp on with right now.
Yeah. And you all as teachers help young people to evolve because everyone's, to your point, focusing on the app update.
Yeah.
But getting that chance to really understand someone else and getting a chance to have your mind opened up and you exposed, a young person exposed to something that is going to be that next leap forward to them, I think is where it's at.
That is why you teach, right?
I would hope so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
all.
you.
This is what I just wrote down. I'm here to continue to ensure that humans continue to evolve. That might not be exactly what you said, but that was
That's
good.
the spirit.
Yeah, I think that's why we're all here. That's what we all have in common in this room. Before I let you guys leave, I have one question for you. What would you like our educators to take back to their classrooms, take back to their students? What would you like to say to kids who'd like to have a career in media?
I say this every time. Again, my mom being my great influence, she would tell me, take your time, do it right. You know, I was a knucklehead, I was messing up. She'd take your time, baby, do it right. And then, of course, me being a knucklehead, I remixed it like, take your time, period, do it, period, right, with a W. And that's like, it reminds me to like, no, this is my time. I'm going to take my time and go into the world and do what I want to do. Do it, experience, live it, be present in that moment, and then write about it. That Marshawn Lynch essay is a clear example of that.
I would say, and kids are much better at this than adults, for sure, but just hold this energy forever if you can. Be curious. Ask an open-ended question and don't judge it. Just listen to what people have to say with an open mind and an open heart and an open soul. And give people a chance to get to know who you are and stand by what you believe. And that will guide you professionally. That will guide you personally. People in their professional world respond to people with integrity, like yourself. People listen. Well, it's true because people want. Part of the reason people listen to what you do as a host is they feel a connection with you because they can feel your spirit in your words. They can feel the integrity.
Thank you.
And on a professional level, that's, I think, I think all of us would like to work with people like this, yes. So it's, I think, just encouraging that. I think young people are really great at that. We as adults start to lose that and start to get a little judgy on things and such. But, you know, it's something that we all are, I would like to think we're on a journey to address.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ernesto and Pendarvis, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.